All right, it is 2 p.m. and we are connecting through bits and bytes for the MWDL conference community day. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. And I want to give you a very warm welcome from the conference planning committee. That is myself, Kinza Masood, Jamie Weeks from Weber State University, Amy Hunsicker from University of Nevada, Reno, Teresa Hebron from Mountain West Digital Library. And we really appreciate you taking the time to attend today's meeting. I know there's a lot going on. Things are different now since March, but it's great. We're still, doing our work in new ways and so many learning curves. By the way, if you can all mute yourself unless you're speaking, that would be really good so that we don't capture some of the noise in the recording. Thank you so much. All right, so, but also I wanted to let you know that we're all thinking of you all the time. We miss you very much, and we're hoping to do this again next year, but in person. All right, a number of you were also at yesterday's Hubs meeting, so welcome back. And today's going to be a very short meeting again like yesterday, and we have a lot to cover, but it's going to be good and interesting, and we want to hear your feedback. We want to hear from you. By the way, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand in Zoom or by typing a question directly into the chat window. Amy, I think she's here right now. She should be. She will be monitoring the chat. And we, again, do request that if you're speaking, unmute yourself and also start your video. We want to see your faces and we want to feel that connection over the bits and bytes. And also just to note that we are recording you, so hopefully everybody is okay with that. And we will send a link to the archive recording and the minutes after the meeting, and we'll be providing a really brief update from MWDL from yesterday, but most of that will be covered in the minutes as well. Teresa's going to talk about our virtual bingo and explain how that works.
All right, well, welcome everybody again. I sent out an email around 11:30 today with links to our bingo cards. So if you've joined us on our community day in the last couple of years, we've played a modified bingo game. I say modified in that it's not a called game. So we're still competing for fabulous prizes this year. And we have a $30 Amazon gift card for a winner and a $20 gift card for a runner-up. So I emailed out links to virtual cards. So please pick a link that you feel is lucky. If that's your current age, your birth year, your lucky number, you go ahead and choose the one that suits you best. Since our meeting is only an hour this year, we're playing with 4x4 cards with no free space. 4 in a row in any direction wins. And here's where things get interesting. Of course, we're on the honor system because we're doing this virtually. So as soon as you have a bingo, yell it out, please, into the chat. So we're going to use the timestamps in the chat here in the Zoom window to do any tie breaking and to determine the winner and the runner-up. And someone did email and ask when I sent out those links saying, can we have multiple cards? As you can see, there are more cards than we have people. So the answer is technically yes. However, only one person is allowed to win the winner and the runner-up, so no double winning. Also, we had to pay for the cards, so please be mindful that we have enough to go around for anyone who wants to play. But so with that, as they always say, it's voluntary, but if you don't play, you can't win. So good luck, players. Kins, I think you're still muted.
I have to remember how to do that. So I guess next slide. We're going to run into the MWDL and DPLA updates. And again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat box. And if you don't have enough time for questions, you can always email them to us later. So detailed updates were provided yesterday at the Hubs meeting. You can share the notes if you want it for most of today's time for a panel. To summarize though, personally, I have spent a lot of time fairly closely with DPLA, with the Network Council and the Advisory Council, and their working groups, and also their other offshoot projects and committees. I was also on the planning committee for the DPLA members meeting, which was supposed to be held in Columbus, Ohio earlier this year, and it got canceled. We had a pretty good agenda going, but it is what it is. COVID-19 happened. Teresa also has been involved in a number of DPLA metadata working groups and projects, and has done a lot of work with them. And we, Mountain West, has been also developing, and we have launched a beta version of our education toolkit, and it is now being used in classrooms. We haven't gathered that data though, because of COVID-19. We're hoping to grab some data soon from that. This involves curating our resources to be incorporated into classroom instruction for K through 9, K through 12 students in the classrooms. We are also looking to collaborate right now with Utah State Archives Department to act as a middle ground for assessing grant allocation, funding allocation through USHREB for our partners. And this is going to be an exciting opportunity for MWDL. We'll be including details in about this project in our minutes as well. We'll be communicating with our partners on how to go ahead and apply for future grants. We also have some wonderful volunteers as well as the library. The volunteers have been helping us with outreach. Thank you, Catherine McIntyre, so much for all of your help for setting up all the booths at the conferences. And thank you, Andrea Pent and team, for your work in the training task force, and Teresa, you for the metadata and your team as well. You guys did great work. Again, details will be added to the minutes. We are also launching a couple of new task forces. We talked about in more detail yesterday around digital library, IT systems review and infrastructure review process, and one hoping to engage the community in planning and implementing a sustainability plan for our education toolkit. I know the audio has been garbled a number of times, I've noticed. I think Zoom is experiencing some sort of overload today. But I'm happy to. Okay, let me know if, can you hear me now better, or like we'll add. All right. So we are most of what I said. Sorry, most of what I said was covered yesterday, and you should see that information in the minutes as well. And I know I've heard that Zoom is having some sort of an overload today, and I've been noticing some garbled audio as well. But I think we should just continue on. We're going to move into a summary of our collection information and metadata information, and Teresa is going to go into that now.
Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me clearly, but I'll try to speak slowly in case it's garbled as well. So just really briefly, so things have been a little bit busy despite COVID going on this spring, and there's been 17 new collections submitted for harvesting since the beginning of the year. And that brings our total number of collections to around 750. And those are from a diverse group of partners, including Utah State Archives, Utah Department of Heritage and Arts, Utah State University, Utah Valley University, and the University of Utah. So we're ready and waiting if you have more collections. It's usually a fairly fast process to ingest things, so please do let us know. And we've had a bunch of exciting new collections like the new COVID and crowdsourced collections that you all have been working on as well. So alongside that, DPLA has continued quarterly harvesting, and we've had 2 harvests so far this year, one in February and then one just earlier in May. And I realized I misspoke yesterday. Our next harvest will be in August, not September, like I said. So with that, I also want to remind everyone that DPLA offers a statistics dashboard. It's web-based, and we have the ability to create accounts for anyone who wants that. So all we would need is your email address, and if you would like that, please let Kinzo or myself know. We can do that really easily. I know some of you on this call already have dashboard accounts, so you may be able to share later when we're having our panel discussion how you use those statistics. Another new thing we're doing this year is we're going to be sending out summary reports with our annual renewal notices to partners. And that just gives a basic summary of metadata collections and harvesting information just so you know where the lay of the land is as you go through the renewal process. So we've had one go out already.
Teresa, that portion I think is kind of, people want to hear that one. That got garbled, the sort of the report, the annual report part. Do you want to repeat that? That piece garbled a little.
Sure. So to repeat, we're going to be sending out an annual report card along with your renewal notices. So for most folks, that's going to be in July and I believe in December. And it will just give a blow-by-blow of harvesting information, what collections are available in Mountain West, and what partners you have within your hubs to give a lay of the land. Let's see, so the next thing, we have also continued to do webinars this year. We've had 3, and the archive recordings for those will be linked in the minutes and are also available in our web archive. And finally, we started a new Twitter campaign when we started quarantine. I call it the historic collection of the day. So I've been highlighting one collection basically each day since the middle of March to help drive more traffic and interest in the collections we have in Mountain West. So if you have a collection that you would like us to feature, please do let me know. And you can find all of them with the hashtag historic collection OTD for of the day. So with that, I think we're up to the ideas task force.
Okay, let me bring up my notes here. Hello, everybody. I wish we were meeting in person. But we just wanted to let you know, we're going to give you a heads up. Last summer, the DPLA Network Council identified a series of priorities. And at the top of that list is the creation of a statement on inclusion, diversity, equity, access, and social justice. And that is where the IDEA acronym comes from. I'm not going to get into too much detail on this, but it was led by Council Member Ann Hanlon. The task force had members of the network and some of the hubs. Kinza served on it as well as me. But we wanted to let you know the statement is coming out, and it's not a prescriptive statement. It's not anything that somebody has to sign to say, if you want to belong to the DPLA, you have to adhere to this. The DPLA really just wants to be a good example and to make some recommendations that other libraries can follow. And I can tell you, as we kind of researched to see what libraries and consortia were offering up, we didn't find a lot of diversity statements that had been posted on archives websites or some of the digital collections websites. So we thought that this would just be a way to give some guidance and help people in that area. The statement provides recommendations for diversity of materials, collections, diversity of members, and a basic do no harm statement to act in good faith as we take in these collections. We also created a bibliography that we hope is rather extensive so that members can apply specific functions to their collections. And that's it. If you have more questions, please just put them in the chat box and I can get back to you later.
All right, thank you. This conference, this day is going to be strange. It's like some of the audio is being a little bit garbled, and I apologize for that. But I think hopefully you got the gist of this. If any questions, please put those in that box. And I hear that Tom Howells from the Utah Fieldhouse of Natural History State Park Museum Collections is online. He's attending for the first time. Welcome, Tom. I just wanted to say that. All right, we are now going to move into panel discussion around the issue that digital libraries may be or are facing in the midst of a pandemic, making it difficult to easily proceed with digitization projects and preservation projects right now, to do with challenges around telecommuting and communication and handling material, working on digitization for grant projects. I don't know if you could hear that. So I said, and working on digitization for grant projects, and also like how to foresee and think about and prepare for something similar in case we are faced with something like this again next year, and hopefully that doesn't happen, but we just don't know. We just sit around and just let, you know, the world kind of take over and dictate what comes to our collections and to our preservation and digitization process, or can we be proactive and plan for that? So we would love to hear from most, if not all of you, but please keep in mind, we have about 4 questions and we have many institutions represented here, and we would like to hear from most of you. We unfortunately don't have that much time, but in the interest of time. So if you have questions, please also post them in the chat. If you are talking, please unmute yourself and also start your video if you're comfortable doing that. And Jamie is going to lead you in the first discussion item right now.
Oh, okay. So our first question is, what kind of issues is your institution currently facing? Like, what are some of the problems that you're facing as you're trying to continue working do some distance working? I know some of the things that came to my mind were, you know, at the beginning, we got people were just trying to get used to figuring out how to kind of cope with the stress. And now we're to the place, okay, now how do we actually be a little more productive? And so we're just wondering, you know, what kind of issues your institution is facing. How are you handling primary sources? You know, those kinds of things. What are you looking at as far as things to keep all of your employees and your students busy? And just, I mean, if you'd be willing to unmute, I mean, it'd be great if you could show your face if you're talking, because it makes it easier. But if you don't want to, that's fine too. And we're not, you can put questions in the chat, or just let us know kind of what you're doing. Go ahead, Nancy.
Well, I feel like our digital publishing group has actually adapted really well. I mean, of course, it's stressful and it happened so quickly and bloomed up seemingly, you know, just instantly, and all of a sudden we were all at home. And but thankfully, I mean, we had a lot of work, and I think that most of us have found that we actually can do most of our work from home. There are obstacles. We need to be more careful with the VPN, and you know, there are connectivity issues initially that were frustrating, but our IT group was super responsive and got everybody set up and working. And I know most of my group is here, so if anybody wants to chime in, we are working on a number of actually historical collections, in addition to our curriculum support type collections. So we have both new things coming in, brand new information created, and actually it seems like the physicians, because we work with a lot of physicians, and many of them were sent home, you know, except for very limited exposure with patients, and so they have actually been creating a lot of material while they're, you know, trying to make use of their time. So it's actually worked out reasonably well. So I don't know if anybody from my group wants to share, but I think we've adapted well.
I think it probably helps that you, a lot of your stuff is born digital, isn't it?
A lot of it, but we are working on a big collection of historical material from the College of Pharmacy, and Carmen Smoot and Mike Tleen have been working on that, and we actually had to relocate a scanner, but we, you know, we worked it out, and Carmen was able to make arrangements to go to the library and mask up and glove up and get the device and get it set up, and so she's been able to continue digitizing for that collection. But yes, a lot of our stuff does come to us in digital format too. So, but we have both going on. It's been okay. I think we've gotten accustomed to it.
I think that's maybe one of the issues that I wondered about, and certainly we've talked about at our institution is really, I mean, the idea of having primary sources leave your building and go anywhere. I mean, I just said no.
Yeah,
I know there are some people
Carmen
that
took a huge box of stuff home, and so did Mike, and they've actually arranged some exchanging of those materials independently. But yeah, you have to be willing. You have to be willing to let that stuff go.
risk. Yeah.
Out.
I just kept picturing my dog ate it. The diary's gone, the dog ate it, you know, I don't know. I don't have a dog. I'm just somebody else's dogs.
So far, so good. No dogs have eaten our homework, so.
All right. Anybody else? None of you have had issues?
I think I would call on Jeremy. Sorry for cold calling you, Jeremy, but I know that you guys are currently working on a project, but at the Marriott Library, correct?
Yeah, so for the Marriott Library, we've most of the time been in the same kind of situation as Nancy, where we've been able to have plenty to do with everybody working from home. All of my team was working from home from mid-March until about mid-May. And we have so many legacy collections that have just never been processed. So we've been able to work our way through a lot of those over the past couple of months. But then in mid-May, we were allowed to have 2 people go into the building 2 days a week each. So they wouldn't be there at the same time, and they would have pretty much the whole 5th floor of the library to themselves so that they could be working on some digitization projects. We had a grant project we wanted to get done. Plus, we wanted to scan some books for course reserves for the fall just to get a little bit ahead on things like that. So we've had 2 people in the building for about 3 weeks now, 2 days a week each, to do some work there. But the vast majority of our work we found that we can do from home with no problem. It's helped by having a couple of crowdsourced projects where we're receiving born digital material, like with our COVID-19 collection and the religious architecture collection. But then over the past 20 years, we have tens of thousands of photographs that have just been sitting on servers that we've been able to work through, and there's a lot of stuff to process. And I guess like you, Jamie, we haven't felt like we should take the primary source materials home to work on. That idea came up in the early days of all this, but we decided, no, we don't want to do that. So I'm glad that we do have a couple people that can go into the office a couple days a week right now to do some scanning.
And I feel like one of the issues that the Marriott Library is facing with that is there's like a team that has to go in and sanitize every single spot that you've kind of walked through, correct? So there's an overhead with having something like that happen, as far as like if you're talking about issues.
Yeah, so for every person that's allowed in the building, they're told exactly where they can and can't go. They're told which elevator to use, which stall in the restroom they should be using, just so we can keep the number of spaces that need to be cleaned at a bare minimum.
I think we're considering starting that, doing a rotation of somebody going in and scanning and getting it on the server so the other people can do metadata and work on other things with it. So, Melissa, did you have anything? I see your face.
Nope, I'm just no, I'm just listening. We have such a unique situation at the Rio Grande Depot because of the earthquake.
Oh,
And
that's
so yeah, so access to the collection is a tricky one to navigate. So I'm interested in hearing what you guys are all doing.
we're not just talking about the pandemic. There are other seismic issues here. I feel like Lindsay might be wanting to say something. I felt like she had unmuted herself for a bit. Was I just imagining that, Lindsay?
There she is.
Oh, she's in her car. We can't hear you.
All right.
Oh, there you are.
No. Probably.
All right.
Okay, we'll come back to you.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody has anything else to add. We are kind of at time. We could take a couple more minutes if somebody. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So we're moving on to learnings during the current work environment, and that panel agenda item facilitator is Teresa.
Yeah, thanks, Kenza. So as we were thinking about these questions, we thought there probably would be some overlap between issues-based and learnings. I mean, I know this could be anything. I know for myself, an example is I was a lot less fastidious than I thought I was being. I have 2 different machines. I have my desktop machine at work and then a laptop I take home once in a while. And of course, I've been working on that laptop now for 3 months. And it turns out it wasn't as good as I thought I was being about keeping everything in a location I could access from everywhere. So there are some files that are lingering on my hard drive at my desk that now I sadly cannot get to. It hasn't been too big a hindrance, but there have definitely been a couple times where I was really kicking myself for not keeping things tidy. So I imagine the things that people have learned in this time that they might take back with them range from small things like that to much bigger things. So with that, I'll open the floor. And I also saw that Jamie posted a link from DPLA in the chat that was back a little bit saying a few things we've learned already during this time. So that might be a source of ideas as well.
By the way, can you hear me yet?
Yes, we can, Lindsay.
Okay.
So we'll loop back to you.
Say that again.
Go ahead.
Okay, I can speak to what we're doing with our primary sources. BYU's had a little bit different of an opening and closing situation. So special collections is open to staff. Sorry, I have a stick, and so I have to drive with 2 hands. So you're gonna see crazy video for a second. So we have some scanning done on our general stacks items. And so what I've done for my students is I've actually checked those items out to them. I got permission from our circulation supervisor to have checkout permissions and workflows. And so any items that were from the general stacks, I've been able to send home with my students. And they can do their cropping and metadata review and QA at home. And then anything that absolutely must, so we've kind of limited it to only the scanning, the stuff that needs to be done in the lab. And they're open 2 days a week. And the students, they come in, I've spaced out the stations so they're 6 feet apart. We have disinfecting wipes everywhere and they're all required to wear masks. So that's kind of how we've worked it, is I've made sure that in the lab, they're only working with the stuff that absolutely has to be done in the lab, and absolutely everything else that can be done online is online. That's all I have to add to that.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. So other folks, lessons learned so far?
Honestly, it's kind of been nice because it makes all my curators do work from home, which tends to be cleaning up metadata messes and making stuff more able to be digitized. So it's great for the future for us.
Yeah.
This is Ryan. Let me, from the State of Arizona Research Library, let me see if video can work.
Yeah, we see you.
So yeah, I think the one thing that we've learned, and it's kind of something that most of us who've wanted to work from home for a while already knew, but couldn't really get any traction on it, was turns out, most of the work that we can do, is from home. There's a lot of important things that we can't. Like we've had to turn volunteers and interns away because it's more people in the building that we can't have. And so there's some digitization work that isn't getting done, but 90% of my role and what I do can be done from home. And that's true for many of us. And there are people who don't want to work from home, just because it's not a good work environment. They can't concentrate unless they're at a dedicated place to do it, that sort of stuff. But for me anyway, and for a few others, we can do it from home. It's just kind of one of those things. And I know this has broader implications for different businesses. It's like, we have all these gigantic buildings that need to house people, but do we actually need them? And I know that it's not true for like libraries and such, but it's kind of like there's sort of an environmental cost to having everyone in one place, everyone at the same place at the same time, day in, day out. Like, I have a 2-hour commute total, like 1 hour in, 1 hour back. And it's honestly, it's a complete waste of time. Like it's just lost time just getting to and from it. And so I can actually be more productive and get more work because I'm not as burned out, because I'm not spending that 2 hours, just getting to the building and back kind of thing. Others are lucky enough they're a 5-minute drive away from work, stuff like that, So, and we've talked about before, because we're already talking about like phase 1 reopenings. We're doing what we're calling enhanced research. So like for city directories, which are used all the time by our patrons, we have someone dedicated on staff that sort of does those requests, rather than have someone, a bunch of people coming in and handling all these things. It's just, better right now for a dedicated person to be handling those materials. Yeah, it's something where, we can be doing that. But while we're talking about, being, I lost my train of thought. While we're talking about phasing in, our leadership, what we call the 7th floor, because that's the floor where the the people at the top of our agency live and breathe and all that stuff. They've talked about making teleworking, keeping that. It's not just a pandemic thing. It's like, oh, when we get to as close to normal as we used to be, that teleworking will be sort of a regular thing that staff will be allowed to do, because before it was just like, no, we don't want to do it. And but now it's kind of like, we have data that shows it's like, well, what work isn't getting done? A lot of us are able to still be very productive in what we're doing, and we can still come in as needed. So it might be 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, something like that. So our agency has become more flexible about what that teleworking options and flexibility looks like. So yeah, and I think, as someone already mentioned, that there's a lot of metadata revisions and remediation that can be going on. And so yeah, that's the same thing with us. Like, because I was one of the first ones to start teleworking because we had like a COVID scare and a family member turned out negative, so it all worked out. But in the overabundance of caution, it's like, well, let's have you start working from home first, which I sort of did. And I told my supervisor, it's like, I have got 3 years of work just fixing metadata on some of this stuff. It's just kind of like, if COVID lasts to 2023, like I can 100% work from home. And I know that's not true for everybody, but for a lot of us it is. We've got plenty of home projects to be doing. So yeah, the big takeaway is just, this is sort of like a new model going forward, that we don't all have to be in the building at the same time all the time, kind of thing. So
yeah, that's a really good summary, I think, for a lot of people, Ryan. I'm curious to know, though, I feel like across the board, what I've been hearing is that things are becoming more flexible for everyone in terms of telework and what we conceive of the idea of work and who needs to be in the office. Is anyone hearing differently from their institutions? I know everyone's sort of in the midst of, getting phased back in. We only just heard the plans, I think, this week, or maybe it was the end of last week, as to how University of Utah is planning to reopen, assuming we don't have a huge spike in cases or something. So not trying to stir the pot though.
Well, we have had the cleanest air in years here in Salt Lake City.
That's true.
And that's because we aren't all in our cars every day or even riding the bus. But, you know, the University of Utah is set in such a bottleneck location. It's always a traffic nightmare no matter how you get there. So there certainly are some advantages.
It's true.
Thanks for that, Nancy. That's some positive right out of all of something. So, and Teresa, thank you for facilitating that extra time. We're going to move into next agenda item that is going to be facilitated by Amy. Interest in collaborating on creating safe digitization spaces while practicing social distancing. If you're interested in putting together or collaborating, what your ideas would be in the future, we can collaborate.
Right. So as we were talking about different discussions that we could have with this group, one thing that came up is that MWDL is a collaborative group. We are a consortia, and so preparing for something in the future that's similar to this, or, you know, if COVID keeps going on, you know, how can we support each other? And, you know, if you didn't quite hear what Kinza said, because she was a little bit garbled, it's not your fault, Kinza, it's okay. The discussion item is there an interest in collaborating on creating safe digitization spaces while practicing social distancing? I don't know if, you know, I think when we are talking about digitization, the physical space is very important. There's only so much we can do at home. And, you know, I think that's the story that we're hearing today, that, you know, if you have metadata you can work on at home, that's great. But sometimes you do need to scan stuff. And so is there a way we can collaborate and come together and come up with a solution to this? I'm putting it out there. I don't have the answer.
I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but since we all are from different parts of the Intermountain West, maybe you know, like your hour commute is what I'm thinking of, Ryan. Like maybe it would be easier for you to do some digitization work like at a different institution, but now how would we get your material over there? I don't know, never mind, this is not a good idea.
No, I think, do you know what though, if you think about like Backstage does that all the time. People send, of course, then you're sending out your primary sources, but you're sending your stuff to a place where they digitize it.
Yeah, we've used Backstage before. Usually it's attached to a dedicated project rather than just like, because a lot of our scanning that we do in-house is just there and we can scan as we need it. Like, you know, a meeting fell through, or I've got, you know, I finished that task sooner, I've got an hour, let me just jump over to the scanner, you know. So when we do send stuff, it's like, you know, hey, we've got, you know, 50,000 pages of newspapers as part of a grant project that they can do. So it does require, for us, you know, like we don't have any, you know, categorical rejections to sending primary source material offsite to get it done. We've done it, you know, for large projects, but that means funding, and we're on LSTA funding, and so it's got to be, you know, we're actually writing our budgets now, and so we have to, you know, think ahead up to a year in advance. What kind of work do we need to get done, and how do we, you know, budget for that? And so that means getting quotes from vendors, and that requires knowing how much you need to send them and how much work needs to get done. So that kind of, you know, it's doable, but it's, you know, in our situation, if we don't have, you know, just ready access to a scanner for here and there things, you know, then it just requires a lot of pre-planning on our part. We do have some staff that are in semi-regularly. We do have someone who sort of is on the scanner, like she's our discovery librarian. Some of you have met her, Brandy. She does a lot of the scanning. So she just kind of knows how to use all that stuff. And so she can just go in, you know, it's not probably going to cause any kind of, you know, high risk of COVID infection or something like that. And oftentimes she's the only one in the building, or maybe there's one other person, you know, so you know, it's kind of, it's a risk, you know, it's a low risk. So we're trying to go in and get something, I guess, more of a stable schedule as we're trying to figure out, well, who's staying home, who's going in, who has to come in, you know, that kind of stuff. So like there's a way around it. But yeah, so, you know, it's not like a, you know, a totally out there idea, you know, kind of thing. It's like we have ways, you know, we have, you know, a budget line for shipping things. You know, it can be done. But for us, like we have to know, you know, way in advance what it's going to cost, who's going to do the work, you know, that kind of stuff. So it just can't be sort of, there's no spontaneity there for us kind of thing. So it's like, you know, it's mixed.
I think, oh, go ahead, Lindsay.
I have a question. So one of the bigger challenges for us is not so much the taking things off site, it's the how do we access our scans off site. How is everybody accessing their files? Do you have like a VPN? Do you have a cloud-based storage, that kind of thing? So I have a VPN at home. My students don't have access to it. I think my IT people are a little concerned about giving students like full access to our shared drive. I've toyed with the idea of having them upload their files into box.com so they can work on them from home. But then you have the trade-off of box.com is a little bit slower and it's not as wonky, and you don't really want them to download the files to their own computer. So that's one of my questions, is what platforms or in addition, I guess, to Ryan's talk about how to get the physical items, how are people working with their files?
We are using Box, but I only have one digitization technician. We don't have any students doing scanning, and he was able to take a scanner at home, so he has a good flat bed scanner that he can use at home, and he just uploads everything to Box, and then I access it. And so it's been really easy for us. We haven't run into any issues.
Good.
Yeah, and I wonder also, thanks for that, Catherine. This is Kinza, like if we are able to, I know the University of Utah is doing something too, and I wonder if they're using Box or if they're using a file share server. VPN can be slow, but I think you should also be able to mail out hard drives. The disinfecting would be something that you would have to kind of take care of, I suppose, at, you know, both ends. But I wonder, because Jeremy was talking about getting files off the server, how the file share happens there. I'm curious.
Yeah, so we're just using VPN. I don't know if any of our students have needed access to VPN, because the things that they're mostly working on transcription projects where they're looking at the images that are already added to our system, so they don't have to access things on the server. But for processing files, we just use VPN. I don't know if Michelle has any more information on that. Want to share anything?
Correct. The students are not doing anything that would need them to do a VPN. Mostly that's what I'm doing. I'm loading files. So that's my portion of working from home, and I VPN. I also have done some Box work, just wrapping up some of our patron requests and stuff like that. That happened early in March, where I hadn't delivered the product yet to the patron. So I did some Box, but we are fortunate enough to have a university subscription to that, and pretty much unlimited space. I haven't maxed it out, and I have so many different things in that, so that's really nice. So yeah, that's the two that we use for digitization the most is Box and our VPN, which I've learned I had to connect my computer to Ethernet because the Wi-Fi was just not working. I kept on going and coming, so very shaky. So if you're having VPN problems, try to connect Ethernet wise. Yeah, so that's the summary for us.
Teresa, Amy, I was looking at the list of participants, and I was wondering if like the Oregon folks or Nevada folks want to say something. I'm trying to see if there's anybody here from Idaho right now. Just their perspective.
Hi, this is Julia from the University of Oregon. We've been very fortunate that although most of our staff is at home, our digital production manager and our half-time digital technician have been able to go on to campus and scan. And our space is such that social distancing is possible. So they've been going in fairly regularly to do their work. We've been using VPN to get to our servers, and that has worked somewhat for some of us who have the bandwidth at home, but it hasn't been useful for our students. We've got some students working on the Oregon Digital Newspaper Project doing web-based metadata, and that's worked for them so far. But as far as our special collections materials, because of the large file size, we've been having trouble getting anybody to work on those other than on campus or through the VPN. Getting our special collections material, we've also been fortunate that we've had one person, the stacks manager from our special collections library, come in once a week and do deliveries on the weekend, so we don't even see him. But Sarah, I know you're on this call. If you want to talk a little bit about metadata and how that's going.
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, like Julia said, thankfully we have the structure to where we can we can have our students access the VPN with their UO credentials and get to those assets. Yes, they are TIFFs and large PDFs too. So that's been difficult getting those to load. I have also been batching them to JPEGs and having them do metadata from home off of that too. So oftentimes I'll have those running like over the weekend so they can work on them the subsequent week. So it's been, depending on the project, it's been kind of a variety of those two solutions. And then, as Julia said, for the Oregon Digital Newspaper Program, thankfully the production team is on site to kind of help move those files around and get them into our web-based system, which, as Julia says, we use for quality control and metadata. So yeah, it's been a variety of solutions. It's been mostly okay. I think it's just large files aren't conducive over VPN has been the main issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've got, standard, just a regular VPN. We also transitioned to, and by we, I think just the agency, to Office 365. So our agency recently switched to that. So, because the VPN can be kind of janky in terms of, getting stuff out of there onto whatever your local workstation is. So what I've been able to do sometimes is VPN in, open up Office 365 because it's web-based, drop my stuff in there, get off the VPN on my local workstation, then grab it from there. And so sometimes, I mean, it's clunky, but it works kind of thing. And one thing Brandy actually figured out, it's kind of has a sort of a narrow application, but with Content DM, because we've got a Content DM license, and since it's local to your workstation, if you VPN in, you can have two Content DMs running at the same time. And so she's been using that to we have a lot of retroactive OCRing to do because we've been finding out a lot of the files that were in there were never OCR'd. We're like, that's not good. So she goes in there, runs an OCR, she VPNs in OCRs, on that Content DM, and then she's got another project open for a different collection, and she's OCRing on her local workstation. or she's just running it through VPN so she can do other projects on her home computer, essentially. So that was kind of like her big brain realization, is that you can have multiple clients running at the same time, so you can sort of multitask that way. But yeah, I've been able to grab everything that I needed, that way. So we're very fortunate that our IT was on it and got VPN set up for everybody. And I think they actually have 2 different VPNs set up, like different login procedures, just to make sure that it's not getting overloaded by everybody jumping in all the time. And I think they put in like a 10-minute lock. If there's like no activity, then it kind of disks, just because like, well, if you're not there, then it's still taking up bandwidth or whatever. So they've got different ways to sort of stop bottlenecking from happening from so many people using it.
Thank you so much, Ryan. That's great. We're going to move into our last question or this agenda item. And like Teresa said, they all tie in and flow into each other. But anything that you guys think about that we haven't talked about, we were thinking perhaps we can start thinking around, if we were to do digitization work offsite safely, what would be recommendations how to do this work safely and also continue with our preservation project. So what can we do to plan to safely resume digitization practices? Sometimes we don't have we don't have the privilege or the flexibility of having enough space to maintain that social distance. We may not have access to multiple blocks accounts. We may not have access to some of the resources with technology. So what can we do to create responsible state and institutional administered spaces? And if that happens, where does the liability lie? Like, Jamie said, my homework, not that we're taking stuff home and not everybody's going to be taking stuff home, but even when that happens, there's not maybe enough security in the building wherever it's being administered. So where does the liability and accountability lie? What does that mean? Do we give digitization for a little bit, or do you want to just continue to persevere? But I'm hearing some really great ideas today about how some of you are doing this in a way that's actually working for your institutions. So any thoughts on this? And is there anyone who hasn't spoken? I know like Jen from Salt Lake Community College, or somebody from Nevada. Anyone else who would like to say something? Darnell, did you speak or did you say anything? Sorry for cold calling people.
Hi, this is Corey. I can give a little update from UNLV if you're interested in hearing from Nevada. I don't have the answers to your questions necessarily, but I do think that we've adapted well to working remotely. And one of the things that I've noticed being a manager in this environment is that everything requires a little bit more disciplined communication. But I think that with that in place, things can be dealt with a bit more creatively than maybe we thought of in the past. And I'm hoping that's something we take away from this, is that there's a real culture shift in trusting the teams to do the work that they do, regardless of whether you can see them doing it. And I think one success story in this area is our students are working with mostly transcription projects. Some of our staff are using the project client through remote desktop or through VPN to get files. But we are in the midst of a DAMS migration right now. And so our focus has really been on reviewing mock-ups of user interface designs and remediating metadata and ingesting and testing our new system. And so with that as our priority, we've been really effective working remotely. And a lot of the metadata work the students are doing, they absolutely love being able to work on their own schedule. And it's really freed them from these rigorous shifts that they had to show up between classes to do their work. And We've noticed that sometimes they work in the middle of the night or whatever, but they're actually far more productive than they were in the office. And so I'm hoping that we can take away a renewed sense of trust in the people working, and that this changes not only me as a manager, but my managers to really empower people to think more creatively about how we do things. You know, I think we're going to do a lot of scanning by appointment. I don't think people are going to plan to bring things home to scan, but I really enjoyed sort of the way that we've been forced to think outside of the box. And I think my team's reacted really well, and I hope that it kind of sticks in terms of how we go forward.
Thank you so much, Corey. That you had some really great ideas. I mean, you know, scanning by appointment, and also you touched upon as a manager or just as a department, how to be able to trust each other. And also, I think, you know, we probably need to be okay with the pace not being the same as it used to be. You know, with our grant works, also, you know, just in general in moving projects forward, there are people dealing with crises that are not just work related right now. And I think just being cognizant of that is really important, especially if you're working with teams across, that span across different, you know, state lines. And, you know, we're dealing with a pandemic, we've dealt with earthquakes, we're dealing with working with new coworkers, as I mentioned yesterday, our pets and our children and doing homeschooling and our partners. We weren't used to working in that environment, but yeah, we're just kind of learning to do things really differently. And I think patience and just also your own sanity sometimes trumps everything else. Thank you for that. Anyone else right now? We have a few more minutes if somebody wants to provide like their final thoughts, probably like 1 minute really before we close. All right, going once, going twice. Anyone that hasn't had a chance to say anything and would like to? Okay, so we are going to close now. We're at that time. So time and location for next conference, just a real quick, we don't know. We're hoping around the same time next year. And if it is on Zoom, then we hope to have a better connection so we can actually hear each other better. Sorry for the little garbled thing. I've been hearing that Zoom's having some issues lately. Our co-chair currently is, our outgoing co-chair is Amy Hunsicker from UNR. Thank you so much, Amy, for all of your help. Her term is ending. She's been wonderful. Our incoming co-chair is Jamie Weeks from Weber State University, and she has been awesome. Thank you for all of your work. She'll be helping us with the planning of the next conference as well. She's going, oh no. We'll have our elections for our next co-chair, and I think we'll be doing those online. So we'll be sending out a Google form. You can nominate yourself or someone else. And I also want to thank Teresa Hebron for helping set up, you know, administering the PowerPoint, and then also, you know, helping with the bingo. And the meeting minutes, again, are going to be sent out to everybody next week, as well as with the archive recording. So you should see that. And again, thank you so much for your participation. And Teresa, you're going to make some announcements about bingo, right?
Yep, I was to say we had finishers to 4th place, but our ultimate winner was Paula Mitchell from Southern Utah University. And our runner-up was Becky McCown from Brigham Young University. Nancy Lombardo snuck in there with a close 3rd place, and then Gina Strack announced herself at 4th. So as they say in figure skating, we have a pewter medalist. But we'll be sending out the gift cards after the meeting here, and probably making an announcement on Twitter, so don't get embarrassed. And thanks for playing, everybody.
Thank you so much, and for coming, and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, we'll see you guys soon.
Yep. Good job, Kenza.
Yeah,
I wish your microphone wasn't struggling, huh?
All right.
Bye.